Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to our study of a text of the Course in Miracles. And today I am here with my friends, Connie, Teresa, my daughter, Sonia, and my name's Eloisa Ramos. So we left off on chapter 6, the lessons of love. And we are on the lessons of the Holy Spirit, which is section 5. And we are in subsection B, to have peace, teach peace, to learn it. Okay. Okay, paragraph 1. To have peace, teach peace, to learn it. All who believe in separation have a basic fear of retaliation and abandonment. They believe in attack and rejection. So that is what they perceive and teach and learn. These insane ideas are clearly the result of dissociation and projection. What you teach, you are, but it is quite apparent that you can teach wrongly and can therefore teach yourself wrong. Many thought I was attacking them, even though it was apparent I was not. An insane learner learns strange lessons. What you must recognize is that when you do not share a thought system, you are weakening it. Those who believe in it, therefore, perceive this as an attack on them. This is because everyone identifies himself with his thought system, and every thought system centers on what you believe you are. If the center of the thought system is true, only truth extends from it. But if a lie is at its center, only deception proceeds from it. Okay. Last line reminded me of something that happened that was kind of funny. Okay, let's start from the beginning though. Okay, so all who believe in separation have a basic fear of retaliation and abandonment. Okay, and that is because we believe that being separate from God has been an attack on God. And therefore, God is going to retaliate. Okay. And also that, we would be guilty of basically abandoning heaven, abandoning our home, um, of rejecting God, and therefore separating from God. And that would be considered abandonment, moving away. Okay. So so what happens now is that idea gets brought into our daily lives and shows up in different ways. So we can be afraid of being abandoned by our partner, by our spouse, by our lover, and we can be afraid of strangers, of the world, of people, of what's the word? Of anyone that we have maybe done wrong to, cheated on, whatever. So we're afraid of retaliation. Okay, number 2, they believe in attack and rejection. Yes. So if we believe we are separate, it means that we have separate interests, separate goals, separate wants, separate needs from you, from someone else. And because we can, let's see, and because that puts us basically in opposition or at odds with each other, we believe then that we believe in scarcity because it means that in order to have my way, you can't have your way. In order to have what I want, I have to deprive you of what you want. Okay. And so that would be attack, that would be rejection. And therefore, that is what we perceive and teach and learn, because we believe that the world is a world of scarcity, and that we have to strive, struggle to survive, and provide for our needs, for our lack. Okay, so 3, these are insane ideas, okay, and are the result of dissociation and projection. So dissociation and projection is just another way of saying separation. Okay, so dissociation is, a decision to no longer associate with you. I don't want anything to do with you. Okay, and I can also do it as an ego in a body. I can dissociate from my body because, I'm not going to care what happens to my body. I'm just going to continue to take pleasure from something that would be harmful to my body, maybe drugs, maybe whatever. Not getting enough sleep, work, whatever it is. Okay. Let's see. So projection is the is basically just blaming someone else, which is judging and which is attacking, because I don't want to take responsibility for what is happening in my experience. So I want to make someone else responsible, my parents, my upbringing, my political party, my another country, anything that is separate from me. And I would just be a victim. I would just be someone that is, a poor, sweet baby. So 4, what you teach you are, but it is quite apparent that you teach wrongly. Yes, because what I'm teaching is that that the world is basically one of conflict, and conflict is fear. And therefore, I am teaching myself that I am something that is weak and vulnerable because I am fearful, and it's a loop. Because I am fearful, I believe I am weak and vulnerable. So, so I'm definitely not as God created me. So number 5, many thought I was attacking them, even though it was apparent I was not. Okay, so the I here, many thought I was attacking. This is our brother, Jesus Christ, whose life we can look at and see that he was teaching love, because he knew that's what he was. And but because it was not, because he was the sharing a thought system of love of God, okay, and others were not teaching that same thought system, they were perceiving attack from him, even though there was no attack. And that's why I think it was the Pharisees were threatened. And that's ultimately, why I think the Jewish leaders put him in jail, brought him to Pontius Pilate. So he ended up getting crucified for that, because they blame him for being blasphemous because he was teaching the teachings were not in accordance with the thought system of the of those Pharisees, and the Jews too, because they were also not following the same thought system. So an insane learner learns strange lessons. What you must recognize is that when you do not share a thought system, you are weakening it. Okay, so this is very important here because we all teach what we learn. We all teach what we believe. And because we are influenced by what we all are teaching, because we're unconsciously teaching it all the time. When we do not share the ego thought system, we are weakening it. Okay, that's sort of the default because we're not strengthening it. So in other words, the ego thought system is not real. And the only way that it stays giving an appearance that it's real is because we support it. We believe it. If we withdraw belief, it has no support and cannot stand because it's not real. It's only the power of our belief that gives it quote unquote reality or strength or whatever. But so the ego thought system requires constant support, belief from our mind. Okay, and if we are not supporting it, if we are not believing it, then yes, it's going to weaken it. So 8, those who believe in it therefore perceive this an attack on them. And they will perceive it as an attack on them and take it personally because they are personally identified with their thought system. Okay. And that's why we have all these conflicts, when it comes to beliefs, what I believe and what you believe. And, I mean, we're in the middle of it with the right to choose thing, the abortion rights issue. So this is because everyone identifies himself with this thought system, and every thought system centers on what you believe you are. So what's really interesting here is that the ego thought system does not, the ego thinks that it opposes God. Okay, but it doesn't oppose God. Okay, God cannot be opposed. Okay, the ego thought system is split. So what it opposes is the separated part it has split off. Okay, and has turned into God. So it's a misperception of God. And a good example of that is the conflict with the abortion movement. Okay, because it centers around the right to life of the body. Okay, and of course the freedom of choice for the woman as a body. So it's all centered around the body, which is not real, which is not what we are in truth. So it's a conflict that is both sides' ego, because only the ego can conflict. The ego is the belief in division, so it can only conflict with itself. It cannot conflict with God because there is no separation for God. There's nothing there. That's why we call the ego thought system an illusion. It's false. It's a false thought system. And what is false cannot oppose what is true because it has no reality. has no real existence. Only what is true can extend truth because it's reality. Everything else is a lie. Look at 11. But if it's a lie, only deception proceeds from it. Ego thought system is a lie, and any conflict and anything that comes from it, fear, is also not real. That's why all the effects from that thought system can be healed because they don't have reality. And the source of healing is reality. It's God, because it's the light of truth. So you shine the light of truth on the sickness, which is darkness, and it vanishes because it wasn't there to begin with. Okay. Okay, so there's a lot there. Okay, any questions before we go to number 2?
Well, there is a lot there, especially, with this conflict with the whole abortion thing. And again, I really appreciate that only the ego can conflict. So how might someone who is a course student and who wants to have a family for whatever reason or doesn't, how would they work with that?
What do you mean? How would they work with that?
Well,
Well, you work with it the same way, right? It's our mind that is the causal level. So
mhm,
any experience that I have is going to be coming from what I believe.
right, of course.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think I just need to sit with this one a little bit longer. I mean, the whole, you know, to choose. We have the right to choose between, yeah, the ego, the Holy Spirit, but if you want to bring, people may think that having a child is extending love, although, yeah,
Well,
according to,
it goes back to the problem. The problem is that we believe that the body is life, that God created life
mhm,
as a body,
mhm,
but the body dies, you see.
yeah,
So
of
it's
course,
not eternal. And
right.
God created us in the likeness of God that is
Mhm.
eternal. So we can't, those two things cannot be reconciled.
I see that. Yeah. Yeah. I think I just haven't really sat with some of the details in my own mind. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really tough one. That's a really tough one because we've all been taught and we've all learned that the body is life. That's what we protect.
Mhm.
When we go into survival, we're trying to protect the body, you know, right? When we don't want to die, we're saying, well, we don't want the body to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or a body to die. It was,
exactly.
yeah.
Okay. So we're trying to protect what is not eternal,
Mhm.
which was made that way. Okay, so could have made it? Well, it had to be another body because God is eternal and God can only create the eternal. You can't, you know, a
Mhm.
pear tree, you plant the seeds from the pear tree and there's going to be pears. Okay, I mean, that's like a physical metaphor for it, but it, we cannot extend what we do not have.
Yeah.
We can only create as we are created. We cannot give what we do not have. So if God has eternity, then God gives what God has in God's creation, which is eternal. It cannot not be eternal, because God would have to have not eternalness. God would have to be lacking eternalness to be able to make a body not eternal. And then God would not be God, because God would be mortal.
Right. So they could abort the baby's body, but the spirit would go on. Yeah.
Well, spirit is eternal. So
Well,
spirit
that's what I
doesn't even
mean.
come in.
Right.
Yeah,
So
spirit is not even an issue in the conflict there.
no,
Because
it
they're not,
isn't.
no, they're not even looking at themselves as
No,
spirit. They're looking at themselves as a body.
right. I'm just thinking on my own how I can make sense of this whole thing. Yeah, so they're not like
Yeah, you
killing
can't.
a body. It's, yeah, because the spirit is eternal and will, yeah, continue.
Yeah, there's no conflict if you recognize that
Yeah,
spirit is eternal. So
right.
what we do is not the issue. Okay, it's the
Yeah.
purpose. So you want to always look at the purpose, not the doing. And the problem with sin, with the idea of sin and condemnation and guilt, is that it's always about the doing. It's always about the behavior. You know,
Yeah.
should I abort the baby? Should I not abort the baby? You see what I'm saying? It's always about making the doing bad or good. And the doing itself is the effect, it's the result of our thought system. So the focus is not where the problem is. That's why you can't solve that problem, because they're trying to solve it where it's just the effect. You can't solve it at that level. Yeah. So, yeah. And we, you know, and we, I don't think we want to solve the problem, because if we did, we would look for another way. Because we would have to admit, well, wait a minute, this problem has been around for, you know, ever since I can remember. And why haven't we been able to solve it? Well, we obviously don't want to solve it because it's part of the ego thought system. And that's what gives reality to the belief in separation, is division. Yeah. So, okay, paragraph 2.
All good teachers realize that only fundamental change will last, but they do not begin at that level. Strengthening motivation for change is their first and foremost goal. It is also their last and final one. Increasing motivation for change in the learner is all that a teacher need do to guarantee change. Change in motivation is a change of mind, and this will inevitably produce fundamental change because the mind is fundamental.
Okay, anything, Sonia?
Well, I'm just thinking what you and Connie were saying before, because there's the whole abortion thing is trying, like you were saying, focusing on the behavior level. And this is emphasizing that the change is a change of mind. But
Yes.
we need the motivation for it. So like you were saying, if we don't want to change, you know, that's the whole ego thought system is being stuck. So if there's no motivation for it in the first place, there's no point. It will never ever change. That's just how it's going to be, constant conflict until
Yeah.
yeah
And that's the way it has been.
yeah
You know, the
yeah
judges vote one way, and then they reverse it and go the other way.
Yeah, 50 years it changed, and then the next 50 years it changes, and then I bet you if we don't change our own mind about it, then in the next 50 years it's gonna change back. So I don't know.
Yes, so the motivation, so what it's saying is that we have not had enough of fear and conflict because we are not motivated enough to look for another way.
Yeah.
So suffering, stress becomes a necessary expedient. When people finally get tired of conflict and division and sickness, and because it's all stress, that's when the mind becomes motivated. And it begins to question sort of the norm, the status quo.
Mhm.
So yeah, so anyway,
I have
so
a
we're
question.
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry, I'm just thinking about the abortion thing too, because people don't have a problem with killing a spider, right? So we're making degrees in in
Life.
life because yeah, no, people don't have a problem stepping on an ant. So why isn't that? So
Well,
why are the people who are anti-abortion not trying to protect those lives?
well, we don't have a problem killing cows for their meat.
Exactly. That's why
Yeah.
I never understood.
Okay. Well, that's because the belief in separation has a hierarchy for everything. So
Mhm,
that's why it's all a matter of degree, right?
mhm,
So the human life is perceived to be at the top of the food chain.
mhm.
And and in the Bible, and there's a part in the Genesis story where God, created man and then created everything, animals in the world. And then it says something about, God gave man dominion over everything else.
Oh,
Yes. So that quote unquote man can perceive itself as the what's the word?
King.
Yes.
mm,
So the split mind can perceive itself both as divine and animal
Mm.
in a very strange way because it's split. So it makes the more advanced brain superior to the primitive brain. And so it tries to repress all the primitive, quote unquote, animalistic instincts.
uh,
And that's why a lot of people that believe that get into problems because a lot of them have to repress a lot of their more base, instincts because
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
mm,
Mm.
Yeah, because that then it gets into the belief, of divine and evil. So it becomes split. Um, and so then the belief of the self is really that we are both good and bad, but you try to repress the bad, you try to control it, you try to, so
okay.
yeah, so the human for the most part is perceived to be a split mind that is both, loving and hateful.
Mm,
And so then, people justify the external controls on the basis that
Mm.
the human has some basic instincts, that has a dark side. It's like the Star Wars movie,
mm,
that the divine self can turn to the dark side and become evil. So then a lot of things become very split in our mind because our perception judges things to be both divine and evil. Yeah.
Oh,
It seems like too, it's okay to kill children at school with guns or whatever, and yet an unborn thing, you know, you can't kill. Well, nothing can be killed, but I mean, you just, that's the thought system that, you know, it's okay to kill kids at
That's,
school.
yes, that's because human life is assigned worthiness as a matter of degree. So for example, what justified slavery was that they believed that the life of a Black person was not as valuable as the life of a white person. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you start making everything as a matter of degree, you basically can do whatever the hell you want and feel that you are justified and, you know, not have to take consequences, not have to.
Justification.
Yeah, you can justify anything you want. Yeah. Yeah, because you're making it all different. So we were just talking about that earlier with Teresa about changing the point of reference. So you can have, you know, not just a double standard, but you can have basically no standard. You know, just do whatever I want. That's what's right. Or, you know, when a parent says, just do that because I say so. Okay, that's just a random, you're making your say so the absolute truth. You know what I'm saying? What kind of reference point is that for a child? What are they going to learn when they grow up? Okay, what would my mother say? Is this the right thing or not the right thing? You see what I'm saying? Trying to make the parent the point of reference for doing what's right and what's wrong. Yeah, or we make the religion. Okay, what would my thought system, my religious thought system say? Is this right or is this wrong? The problem is that there's no consistency. So even when we try to do the right thing, we end up doing the wrong thing. And so it's all just confusion. Yeah.
That's interesting. My husband's father would always say when Chris would go out, and the one thing my husband always has remembered is, you know, right from wrong. As he was going out the door, you know, right from wrong.
Yes. And what the father was saying is, you know, right from wrong, as I have taught you my thought system, right from
Somehow
wrong.
it worked. Somehow it worked.
Well, because his father taught him well, right? He adopted the thought system. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the same thought system. Okay. So, but, and if his dad had, you know, if he respected, depending on what, you know, he taught him, then it may have worked well. But, you know, some of us learn stuff that does not work well.
Hello. Everything.
Yeah.
Did not learn wrong. I did not. I learned wrong from wrong. Anyway.
Or, yeah,
right,
or we have it, you know, we learn it completely upside down.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. Okay, number 3.
Okay, so the first step in the reversal or undoing process is the undoing of the getting concept. Accordingly, the Holy Spirit's first lesson was to have give all to all. I said that this is apt to increase conflict temporarily, and we can clarify this still further now. At this point, the equality of having and being is not yet perceived. Until it is, having appears to be the opposite of giving. Therefore, the first lesson seems to contain a contradiction, since it is being learned by a conflicted mind. Can you scroll down?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
This means conflicting motivation, and so the lesson cannot be learned consistently as yet. Further, the mind of the learner projects its own conflict and thus does not perceive consistency in the minds of others, making him suspicious of their motivation. This is the real reason why, in many respects, the first lesson is the hardest to learn. Still, strongly aware of the ego in yourself and responding primarily to the ego in others, you are being taught to react to both as if what you do believe is not true. Well, that's a big paragraph. Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Okay, but it's giving us really, really good, let's see, pointers here. So the first line says the first step in reversal of the undoing process is the undoing of the getting concept. Okay, the idea of getting is a scarcity idea. Okay, it's based on a belief in separation, that in order for me to have something, I have to get it from somewhere, from you, from somebody else, which means I have to take it away, because it's fundamentally a scarcity belief. Okay, so the first lesson of the Holy Spirit we just finished before is to give all to all. Okay, which does not involve getting. It's only giving. And that can be confusing because we when we believe in scarcity, we believe that giving is a loss. Yeah. So 3, I said that this is apt to increase conflict temporarily because of that. Okay. And we can clarify this further. So the equality of having and being is not yet perceived. Okay. Because remember that being from being as we were created is extending. And we can only extend what we have because it's a sharing. And when we extend what we have in being, there is never any loss, because what we are extending is truth. And the truth is beyond separation, and therefore is beyond scarcity. There is no scarcity in the thought system of God. And the being knows that. That's why it extends and shares. And that's why it has everything, because it knows the truth about being spirit without scarcity, without limits, without, death. There's nothing there that it lacks. Okay, so, but the first lesson can seem to have a contradiction, okay, because we're learning it as a conflicted, split mind. So, and so for a time there, as we learn the truth, the mind can feel conflicted in motivation. I gave a little example the last time about that lady that wanted the vacuum cleaner. Came to buy, and so for a second, my mind, my thoughts did go into a little bit of conflict there. Just for a second, when she asked me that, I started thinking in terms of the world. It's like, wait a minute, this was over $100 vacuum cleaner. I started going into that valuation of the world. But then I stopped,
Boy, she was your teacher to help you
yes,
really look at that. But you got
yes,
it quickly. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so it was good. Yeah, it was good to see that. So,
Yeah.
So for a while there, we are going to be conflicted about it because we've trained our mind to think in terms of degrees, the way that the world thinks in terms of degrees. I can't give this vacuum cleaner away. I paid money for it, I paid a lot of money for it. It's a matter of degree, a lot. Why would I want to give that? That would be a loss to me. Do you see what I'm saying? So we have to, in order to undo that, we're undoing the belief in scarcity. So it takes practice. So thank you for that. Was an opportunity to practice. Yes, you're right, Connie. So
What's really hard for me is feeling, I need to give gifts for birthdays or whatever, because it's kind of been an ingrained thing. And then I just have the hardest time. It's like I go out and I can't find anything, and I'm looking, it's like I don't even want to do this gift exchange thing, but I feel like I should, oh,
yeah,
she gave me this last year. Yeah, that kind of thing.
yes, because that's
So
also part, because that's not true giving, that's exchanging.
exactly. And I know that. And yeah,
Mhm.
it's uncomfortable. So
Well,
to just
yeah, it's
give,
uncomfortable because it's based exactly on what this is saying, that, okay, that if you don't give something, she's going to say, well, wait a minute, that's a loss to me because I gave you something. Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah, no, I totally get it. I
Yeah.
just wanted to throw that out there because it
Yeah.
is. It's not, yeah. So to give from the heart or whatever, to just, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a difference between extending,
Yeah.
love, right? Which has
Yeah.
no, it's not conditional. There's no
Yeah.
strings attached. It's just given without expecting anything in return.
Mhm.
Yes. And
That's
then
okay
giving,
too.
yeah, giving from a place of scarcity, of saying, well,
Mhm.
no, this obligates you to be nice to me, to whatever. I'm expecting something back.
Yeah, it's giving from a place of scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's just not right.
Well, that's the way the ego thought system works, okay?
Yeah.
Because remember that the ego thought system was made without love. So it cannot offer love. When we identify with our ego thought system and operate from that place, we are not giving love. Maybe we're giving specialness. Maybe we're giving,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's not love. So um, yeah, so this lesson, to give all to all, to have is to give all to all, is the hardest to learn. So let's see, 10, still strongly aware of the ego in yourself and responding primarily to the ego in others. So that's the pressure that you're feeling, Connie, is that you're responding, that you should give the gift. That's the responding primarily to the ego in others. You are being taught to react to both as if you want to believe. React to both as if what you do believe is not true. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, and could that be why I could never find anything appropriate? I don't know. Okay, I'm going to be quiet because,
It is, Connie, because you're holding on to both. Yeah.
uh-huh. It doesn't, yeah, it doesn't feel right to be looking for a thing to give. And yeah,
Mm-hmm,
rather
mm-hmm.
than,
Because a part of your mind recognizes it's not true giving.
mhm. Yeah, that's the conflict.
Mm-hmm,
Okay, that is helpful.
mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Okay, number 4.
Upside down as always. The ego perceives the first lesson as insane. In fact, this is its only alternative, since the other possibility, which would be much less acceptable to it, would obviously be that it is insane.
Mhm.
The ego's judgment, here as always, is predetermined by what is. The fundamental change will still occur with the change of mind in the thinker. Meanwhile, the increasing clarity of the Holy Spirit's voice makes it impossible for the learner not to listen. For a time, then, he is receiving conflicting messages and accepting both. I mean, Connie's example is perfect for this.
Mhm. Mhm.
On one hand, she knows that buying a gift and giving it to someone is not genuine giving of, spirit or whatever. And on the other hand, she feels this obligation to give a gift because of what's happened in the past.
Yes. And so you can think of receiving the gifts from an ego as being really indebtedness.
Yes.
Mhm. And so that's a form of imprisonment. Do you see?
Yes.
Yeah. hmm Which is what the word obligation implies. Yeah. So the upside down, as always, as upside down, the ego perceives the first lesson as insane. Well, yes, because it has to perceive it as insane, because otherwise it would have to accept that it is insane.
Mhm.
Mhm. Um, and so the ego's judgment here, as always, is predetermined by what it is. So the ego's judgment is always insane. That's why we really do our best to not judge and to forgive. Because otherwise, we are kind of, the mind is sick, it's insane. So as we do the mind training and practice of forgiveness, then the clarity of the Holy Spirit voice makes it impossible for the learner not to listen. That becomes more and more clear. It becomes more and more clear to the mind that it's the ego thought system that's insane. Okay. And so it becomes easier and easier and easier to not listen to it, to disregard it. You see? So it's a little bit like the example I gave with the vacuum cleaner. So even though my thoughts started going into that, I didn't follow it. I just didn't. After a little while, I said, oh no, that's just, I've heard that before. I'm not buying that again. So it does become easier and easier to not get sucked into that insanity, and to be able to just give freely without fear of loss. Okay. Let me just, okay. Okay, next paragraph. Let's see. Paragraph 5.
I think it's you.
It's my turn. The way out of conflict between two opposing thought systems is clearly to choose one and relinquish the other. If you identify with your thought system, and you cannot escape this, and if you accept two thought systems which are in complete disagreement, peace of mind is impossible. If you teach both, which you will surely do as long as you accept both, you are teaching conflict and learning it. Yet you do want peace, or you would not have called upon the voice for peace to help you. Its lesson is not insane. The conflict is. Okay. So when we are in our ego thought system and we are in conflict, we are, let's see, we have a split mind. And so we need to make a decision. We need to choose one and relinquish the other. Okay. So if we identify, so if you identify with your thought system and you cannot escape this, and if you accept two thought system, which are in complete disagreement, peace of mind is impossible. Yes. So, and this is a place of indecision where we keep going back and forth, okay? And let's see. This is where we feel fear because internally we experience conflict because we are in some way doing things that are contradictory, or we are doing things without wholly wanting to. So we are feeling coerced, or like you were saying, Connie, you're feeling obligated. Okay, so that's, you know, there's conflict there. So, and if we are teaching both, then we are teaching conflict and learning it. So we want to decide and not for, you know, as soon as possible, we want to decide so that we can be out of that conflict because we want peace. Yes, so the lesson is not insane. The conflict is insanity. And the reason why the conflict is insanity is because the thought system of God, because God cannot be opposed. Okay, but to the ego, which is a belief system of conflict, God can be opposed. Do you see? So the belief in separation is the belief that we can oppose God's will and that we can be in a position where we are not in alignment with the will of God and where we can actually be greater than God and offend God and oppose God and attack God, which is all insanity. Because it's not possible in reality. It's just that we are identified with the ego thought system that believes it is possible. Okay. Okay, number 6. Sonia?
There can be no conflict between sanity and insanity. Only one is true, and therefore only one is real. The ego tries to persuade you that it is up to you to decide which voice is true. But the Holy Spirit teaches you that truth was created by God, and your decision cannot change it. As you begin to realize the quiet power of the Holy Spirit's voice and its perfect consistency, it must dawn on your mind that you are trying to undo a decision that was irrevocably made for you. That is why I suggested before that you remind yourself to allow the Holy Spirit to decide for God for you. So is this saying essentially that really it's just the decision is just to remember that there was no decision in the first place because it was already established? Is that?
Yeah. It's saying that the decision itself is part of the ego thought system illusion.
Right. You
Yeah,
need two to choose from, but there's no decision in heaven because there is no other. There's no two. Yeah.
there's no
Okay.
separation.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So the decision was never made because there never was a tiny mad idea. Because madness is not real. It never happens. It's delusional, right? So that's why the first sentence says there can be no conflict between sanity and insanity. Okay, so the ego thought system is a thought system of insanity because it believes that the impossible is possible, that the separation actually happened, and it never happened. Okay, so only one is true, that the separation never happened, and that is the only one that is real. But the ego tries to persuade you that it is up to you to decide which voice is true. Okay, so the ego says, no, 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 no. What is true has not been established. You get to decide what is true with the power of your belief. Okay, so in other words, truth has not been created. You get to self-create yourself, which is a really good story. And, you know, we buy into it, but it's not true. The Holy Spirit teaches you that truth was created by God, period. Okay. And that's why we can't change anything by believing in it, in truth. It becomes true to us subjectively and maybe to a whole collective, but not to everyone, not universally. Okay, because it's still subjective. The ego thought system is subjective. It has to be, because it's a belief that there is no wholeness, there's no oneness. So the ego thought system can never be, even if everyone believed. So the ego thought system is the belief level is still the domain of the ego. And so it's impossible for every single person to believe the same thing, because then that would be wholeness. There would be no separation. So if it's going to remain the ego thought system, there has to always be at least one opposition, one exception. So one, thing that's separate. So, that's just the thing. So, we do not establish what is the truth by our beliefs. Our beliefs have power, but they don't have power to change what is the truth to something other than the truth. And that's what makes it completely consistent. That's why truth is completely consistent. Okay, and so that's why the decision to choose something other than the truth is an illusion. But we believe that it happened, that we did it, that we accomplished the impossible. And that's why, there's so much arrogance in the ego thought system. So, okay, number 7.
Okay. You are not asked to make insane decisions, although you can think you are. It must, however, be insane to believe that it is up to you to decide what God's creations are. The Holy Spirit perceives the conflict exactly as it is. Therefore, his second lesson is to have peace, teach peace to learn it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's not up to us to decide what God's creations are, and that's what judgment is. Okay, when we judge, we are believing that we can decide what you are. Oh, you are such a crummy friend. Oh, you are a good parent. Oh, you are a bad parent. Oh, you are, so that's all that judgment is believing that we can decide what God's creations are, including ourselves, by giving them labels. Um, and that's not true. It doesn't change the truth of our creation. Or, because you did this, that makes you this now. Or anybody that would do that is this. Okay. So all of those are just judgments and ways of saying that it is up to us to decide what God's creations are. And so to have peace, teach peace, to learn it means that that we're not going to judge because we're not going to divide. Judging, condemning, let's see, projecting, that's all conflict. And so to have peace, teach peace, to learn it. So we choose forgiveness. Okay, number 8.
This is still a primary step since having and being are still not equated. It is, however, more advanced than the first step, which is really only the beginning of the thought reversal. The second step is a positive affirmation of what you want. This then is a step in the direction out of conflict, since it means that alternatives have been considered and one has been chosen as more desirable. Nevertheless, the term more desirable still implies that the desirable has degrees. Therefore, although this step is essential for the ultimate decision, it is clearly not the final one. Lack of order of difficulty in miracles has not yet been accepted because nothing is difficult that is wholly desired. To desire wholly is to create, and creating cannot be difficult if God Himself created you as a creator.
Mhm. Okay, anything, Teresa?
It just goes back to the statement prior to it, to have peace, teach peace, to learn it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so the second step is putting us is let's see, it's number 3. The second step is a positive affirmation of what you want. So what it's saying is that we are now motivated to choose peace rather than conflict, because we are now seeing that conflict is no longer what we want. Okay, so the motivation now is beginning to go in the right direction. It's a step in the positive affirmation of what I want. The ego thought system is about what I don't want, because it's about rejection. It's about attack. It's about seeing what is wrong. Okay, and that's all part of fear and conflict. So to begin to think about what I really want is to begin to say, I want to see this differently. So the motivation now is starting to show up, because we are deciding, gosh, I've kind of had enough of suffering and conflict and fear, and I'm ready to let it go. So, and, it's talking about the degree, I can at least say now that, yeah, it's more desirable to have peace than conflict. okay, maybe I haven't completely decided, okay, I'm done with conflict, period. I'm done with fear, but I am definitely motivated to choose peace. And that's just what it was saying here in line 7. So nothing is difficult that is wholly desired. So all the stress that we experience is because of inner conflict. And healing is inner peace. Health is inner peace. So by letting go of the conflict, we are healing the mind. We're choosing to heal the mind. And it's also, wonderful what it's saying here is that to desire holy is to create, which goes back to the first step, to give all to all, because that's extending. That's what creating is. And creating cannot be difficult if God himself created you as a creator. So God creates us by extending of what God is. And that's why we were talking about the abortion issue. That's why we cannot be a body, because we are created from the extension of love itself, which is eternal love, eternal spirit. Okay, number 9. Is it my turn? Okay. The second step then is still perceptual, although it is a giant step toward the unified perception that reflects God's knowing. As you take this step and hold this direction, you will be pushing toward the center of your thought system, where the fundamental change will occur. At the second step, progress is intermittent, but the second step is easier than the first because it follows. Realizing that it must follow is a demonstration of a growing awareness that the Holy Spirit will lead you on. So the second step is a recognition that I'm headed in the right direction. So there's trust. There's a growing sense of trust there for the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Even though the second step, I choose peace, is still perceptual, which means that I'm still perceiving that there's choices here, that there's a difference. It's still a big step here towards the unified perception without conflict that reflects God's knowing. Okay, so let's see, any questions before we stop here? Nope. Okay, great. So next time we'll do the section C, be vigilant only for God and his kingdom. So that would be the third lesson of love. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us. And until next time, bye.